Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk to you about Netflix's live-action adaptation of the classic anime Cowboy Bebop. And I know that I'm late to the party on this one, but I wanted to watch the entire thing before coming on here and offering you my opinion about it. I know a lot of people watched the first episode or some clips and had a number of opinions on social media, but I'm a huge fan of Cowboy Bebop, so I wanted to give the entire show a go before just spouting my opinions on the internet. Unfortunately, I have a life, so it takes a little bit to work through the 10 hours of content. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about both the good and the bad of Netflix's live-action Cowboy Bebop. But it's going to be a lot of bad. It's going to be a rough one. So right off the rip, Cowboy Bebop, the anime, is considered a classic. It is a genre-defying and defining classic at the same time. If you watch the show, it says the work that will become a genre unto itself shall be known as Cowboy Bebop, and it actually lives up to that boast. It's also considered unadaptable because there's all this like cyberpunk and tech noir and space stuff, and then cowboys and samurais and Chinese stuff. It just tons of crazy, it just moves it at like a turbo speed. So adapting this would blow up anybody's budget. And the other issue with adapting is that this is considered a top anime of all time, like one of the best. It's one of the very first ones that I ever watched in my life. This is one of the shows that got me into anime. I got lucky that I started out with one of the goats of anime. So it's cherished in the entire anime community, which is a very difficult one to please, and it's very difficult to translate that to live action. So in the bad section of this, as John Cho, the lead actor who plays Spike Spiegel, says, Cowboy Bebop is an expensive fan fiction, and I gotta say he's not wrong. We're gonna revisit this in the good section again, but my initial impressions of this show were very negative. Like, watching the first episode almost gave me clinical depression. That little face I'm making in the thumbnail, yeah, I kind of really made that face when I first started watching because it's just very weird and kind of off-putting sometimes. So, two big examples that you've probably already seen. Take a look at this clip of talking to Jet.
Dinner. Me, you, bottle of Chianti. 2 bottles if we're feeling dangerous.
Sounds to me like blackmail.
You're damn right it is, because Jet, you are black and you are male.
Yeah, that's just very cringeworthy dialogue. I don't know who wrote that. I don't know how it got approved. Netflix is so woke, they're going backwards into like anti-wokeness. I don't quite get it. And then there's also, this is a spoiler, so you should probably skip 30 seconds if you don't want to see this, when Ed shows up. We get a little teaser, about 20-30 seconds of Ed, and this is Ed.
Spike! Spike Spiegel!
No. Spike Spiegel. Not anymore.
Yes, you are. You're Spike! Cowboy! Bounty hunter for hire! Wake up! I have a job for you! Bounty!
Oh my god, that was weird. That was really weird and unappealing and annoying, and I think that I genuinely hated it. So yeah, my take on this was pretty rough. Nothing about it makes sense. The style and filming for this entire project is also very weird. You'll start off with colorful, then dark, then black and white, then film noir, and you'll bounce around from style to style to style really, really fast, even from scene to scene. You would think kind of like the old anime, like you have an episode that's film noir, and then you have an episode that's blaxploitation, and then you have a cowboy episode. Well, they'll do all 3 or 4 of those in one of these hour-long episodes. Bear in mind the anime was only like 20 minutes long, so you probably could do 3 in an hour. But there would be radical shifts from scene to scene. We would go from like tech noir to like 50s noir to cowboys, just really fast, and kind of jump back and forth between the both of them. And it's a very difficult thing to watch when it's in real life. Now, to be fair, the anime does this too, it just does a much better job of this because it's separated into little chunks. And also, to be fair, one of the things they did do is they built 185 different sets to film this show. So it's not like the CW or a lot of Netflix shows where you just come back to the Arrow Cave after every battle and let's go visit the police station in Lucifer. And you know, they'll build like a couple of good sets and then everything else is very YOLO. There's a brand new set like every 2 minutes going on here, just crazy stuff constantly going. But I do want to talk about the way it's filmed, which is bizarre. Not only are we talking about like palette and tone and color shifts, it'll swap to first person, it'll swap to Steadicam, and a lot of Dutch angles. If you're unfamiliar with what a Dutch angle is, that's when you take your camera frame like this and you just like rotate it to the side. So it gives you this kind of sideways, disorienting look where it feels a little bit like you're watching it from a distance, like you're spectating, like a child looking up maybe. And there's a lot of times that Dutch angles can work in media. There's a lot of places to use them. But man, it's like, it's probably more Dutch angles than non-Dutch angles. I'm watching this movie and it's not movie, it's show. It's like constantly going left and right and left and right, but for no reason. And I'm looking at the shots, and as a peasant YouTuber who's definitely not a cinematographer, I think to myself, I wonder what it would look like if I went back and did a fan re-edit and just took all of these Dutch angles and just straightened them back out, because I think the shots would have looked way better that way. And I actually have a suspicion they were filmed that way, but they were tilted in post to make it look like really cool. But it needs a reduction of about 80% of its Dutch angles, because if you do that, I won't feel dizzy when watching it. It also has very wildly inconsistent VFX. Some of the effects are very convincing, very believable, very cool. Other ones look very, very cheap. There's a lot of 3D printed space guns and 3D printed stuff in general that you can very clearly tell is 3D printed thanks to Netflix's overall high bitrate and resolution and stuff. That might just be a medium problem, but it doesn't look quite right. Somehow, despite all the money they put on this, it comes off looking cheap and kind of underbaked. Now we're going to move on and talk about the bad stuff going on in the acting, as if those clips you just saw weren't bad enough. Jet was done very poorly in the first 3 episodes. I think I hated Jet. In the first 3 episodes of this anime, they took everything that was the character of Jet and shrunk him down to like one note of grumpy, angry, moody, kind of stupid. And that wasn't really the character of Jet from the anime. Jet was not a genius. Jet was a very simple man. He had good connections, friendly, affable. He liked taking care of his little bonsai trees. He was a chef and could be very sweet on occasion. We got none of that until much later on. I will say that in the later episodes, Jet, the actor playing Jet, finally gets to do Jet things, and it's way better. But in the beginning, Jet is like this stupid Cro-Magnon, just, I don't like everything grumpy. And it just so not good. And on the topic of Spike Spiegel, I'll say that John Cho is no Spike Spiegel or John Wick when it comes to martial arts. John Cho looks like the character, acts like the character very well in my opinion, and I know that he trained to do Jeet Kune Do. He got in great shape. They have the scene where he shows off his abs and stuff. But at the end of the day, he can't do that close, good-looking martial arts that we got spoiled with, like watching Keanu Reeves do everything for real in John Wick. It's not like that. There's a lot of cuts back and forth so that the stuntman can step in and do stuntman stuff, and John Cho does mostly the easy things. The character of Faye is done excellently. I have very, very few complaints about her. They've actually made her a little bit less of a horrible person than the anime, and I think that kind of works. And of course, the lead actor is Ein, the dog. Really, really carries the show. You know, he's got the acting chops to make all of this work. But I say all of these things to get to the main point of this entire video, which is that anime doesn't translate well to real life. If you make something too much like an anime, it doesn't make sense. If you watch an anime or a cartoon, what you're getting is the vibe of something. You're getting the feeling of it, the essence of it. You know, somebody grabs a girl's butt and she pulls the hammer out of her coat and hits him on the head, and some other guy is bleeding out of his nose. Another dude turns pink because he's embarrassed. That gives you, if you're watching it in animated form, the idea of a feeling, of a place you've been before, of a thing you've seen before, of how people may have once acted in one situation, or how they, you know, might feel like acting. But doing all of these things in real life doesn't make very much sense, because human beings just don't really interact like this. For example, let's compare animated Ed to live action Ed. So this is animated Ed.
I gotcha!
Hold on. These mushrooms are worth 100,000 each. Let me go, and they all yours.
I don't know.
Me or the shrooms? What's worth more?
I don't know.
What? Are you a total ad? Take the mushrooms.
All right.
Very annoying, very loud, a lot like a child that you've probably had to take care of or deal with. Now let's take a look at live action Ed.
Batman's big reward. We have to find the butterfly man. Ooh, danger, danger.
Too
We have to find Velazio before he does spooky bad things.
This looks like a child having a mental breakdown where you need to call the parents for some support or medication. Even though the acting is almost one-to-one, it doesn't make sense because the medium has shifted. The anime is conveying the idea of an annoying child. The live action is a very, very frustrating and annoying child that makes you want to punch instead of recognizing, oh, that's what kids are like. So what Netflix didn't do is it didn't tone its characters to fit the medium. They needed to change the characters slightly, probably tone them down to fit like the IRL medium. And if by some miracle we get a season 2, I hope that they do that with Ed and most of the other characters. On that same note, the whole setting is less believable in real life too. The space future works in cartoon form, so the basics of Cowboy Bebop is that Earth gets kablooied, there's not much living there, and that humanity spreads out into the solar system, living on various small moons and asteroids and space stations and little clusters of humanity. So as the bounty hunter ship hops from asteroid to moon to planet to whatever, what they're getting is a different slice of life, like Russians settled here, and this is New Tijuana, and this is New York, and this is like Space China and Space Japan and stuff like that. And that kind of works in cartoon form. You kind of believe it, but when you put all of this in real life, it looks very absurd and kind of impossible. Also, every episode is an hour long, which is probably way longer than it needs to be, man. The show is 20 minutes. It's snappy. The anime actually, it moves. It doesn't hold on anything. And the problem is that somehow the show, the live action show, has the same snappy pacing of that anime, but you never hold on anything long enough to really understand it. So there's a lot to not like about Cowboy Bebop. There's a lot of things that are very unappealing that are going to keep a lot of people from watching it, but I stuck with it. And I watched all 10 episodes, and I will say that Cowboy Bebop, the live action adaptation, gets much better as it goes. It's kind of like watching The Hobbit for the first time in 48 FPS, or Avatar in 3D, or any kind of film that's a little bit more style than substance, like a Descent into Madness type media, or something that, you know, something like Mandy, that's all about looking cool and less about making a lot of logical sense. And about the time you make it to episode 4 or 5, which is, I admit, a very long way in and a huge commitment for a show that a lot of people aren't going to like, it starts to feel a lot better. It starts to feel a lot more like the anime. It's a lot more interesting. And what helps the most is when you have the whole crew come together. When it's in the beginning and it's just Jet and Spike and that's really your only characters, it really sucks. And I hate to say that, but it just doesn't work. Once Ein shows up, it's better. Once Faye and Ein show up, it's way better. And I gotta tell you, the original anime was like this too. I went back to rewatch it recently with my brother who'd never seen it. I tried showing him, and I watched, I think it's like the first 6 or 7 episodes of the anime before the whole crew comes together. And the first 5 or 6 episodes are pretty forgettable, to be honest with you. They don't really hold up to the rest of the series. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not as fun. I found myself being bored watching one of the best animes of all time. But then once everybody finally comes together, oh my God, the show is so much better. It's great. It's a classic. Similar kind of thing happening here with the live action show, except it goes from terrible to like, all right, you know, this is okay. Once we get everybody together, much, much better. There's another cool thing I wanted to say is that Netflix built 185 unique sets to film Cowboy Bebop, which is very impressive. As I discussed before, most media companies are going to build 1, 2, 3 sets, something like that, and reuse them a lot. They built 185 unique ones. There's lots of different styles of film going on here. They just like the anime, you will get noir, then you'll get tech noir, then you'll get cyberpunk, then cowboys, then Chinese stuff, then mafia stuff, then comedy, then horrifying clowns are attacking people. A lot of different things going on. If you like something a little kinematic, a little actiony, a lot of variety, definitely going to be in there. I will say that I can appreciate the R-rated take on Cowboy Bebop. Now, the original Cowboy Bebop was made for the Japanese rating systems at the time. I don't know why there's dog hair floating around. Got to get rid of that. But I would say that the original is roughly like a PG-13 kind of show. There's not too much cursing. There's not really nudity. It's violent, but it's not gory or too... It really is something that like a 13-year-old could watch as like a space adventure kind of thing. And that's something when I was 13 I was watching and I grew up with it. And now that Netflix has it, they've decided to make it R-rated. They've decided to put the nudity back in, the violence, the cursing. When people get shot, it's messy. When we're trying to hunt down a bounty, we don't go to the karaoke bar, it's the strip club now and things like that. And I can genuinely appreciate that take because the backstory of Cowboy Bebop is a very mature one, and increasing the maturity of the content actually matches the story a little bit better. Speaking of story, there is a ton more backstory with Vicious and Julia. Now, Vicious is the main antagonist, and Julia is the mysterious woman that our main character is chasing down. In the original anime, there is very little backstory going on. You'll learn 4 or 5 facts about what happens and then like a big reveal in the final episode. And that's kind of what drives the plot of the main character Spike as we move through the anime. But you don't really know, it's all mysterious. And this one, all the mystery is gone. You're getting all the backstory, the full thing, top to bottom. A lot of people don't like it. I've seen a lot of reviews that says they hang on Vicious and Julia for too long, that it works better when it's mysterious and things like that. And a lot of the flashback scenes are filmed in kind of like this soap opera style, which, to be fair, the anime had it in soap opera style. It's just really weird to see that showing up on Netflix. A lot of people didn't like it. I can understand that. It's not the best, but I kind of view this as like something that we didn't get with the anime. This kind of fills out the backstory and the vagaries and some things I had questions and curiosities about that actually make a lot more sense in this live action world than they did in the world of the anime, and I'm kind of okay with that. So, with my final rating of Cowboy Bebop, I'm going to give it a rating of not boring and worth watching if you're patient. The show is a million years from perfect. It is flawed in many ways. Unfortunately, most of the flaws are all stacked up in about the first 4 episodes, and then after that, it gets a lot better. I don't know if that better ever gets to like being fully good, definitely not great, but it does improve significantly. So if you want to watch something that is guaranteed to not be boring, if it is going to be crazy, actiony, cheesy, campy, ham-fisted, blaxploitation, cowboys, ninjas, Vikings, warriors, cyberpunk, whatever, go. It's fun. It's totally good for that. And I think it's okay to watch it for that reason. If you like watching really well-crafted, top-tier stuff like, say, Midnight Mass, you're going to be really upset with Cowboy Bebop. Also, if you're a huge fan of the anime, you'll probably be pretty butthurt about it too. All right, guys, that is all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful about Cowboy Bebop. Let me know what you think about these media reviews. And I guess that's, see ya, Space Cowboy.